says that your love won't be alive.
In the long and winding story of the Beatles, few projects have caused as much behind-the-scenes tension as Sessions. The ill-fated 1985 compilation, album that promised to unveil a treasure chest of unreleased songs from the Fab Four. Hello to all you classic music lovers, the cool gentlemen of the good old days and even now. Let's rewind time and enjoy a heartwarming wave of nostalgia together. What began as a seemingly harmless archival project quickly escalated into one of the most bitter disputes between the surviving Beatles and their record label. A conflict that raised fundamental questions about legacy, ownership, and artistic integrity. The plan was straightforward on paper. Gather the band's best unreleased recordings, clean them up, and release them as a collector's dream come true. EMI and Apple Records had identified 13 tracks, including Leave My Kitten Alone, That Means a Lot, and an alternate take of Obla-Di, Obla-Da. The concept seemed like an easy win. After all, fans had been hungry for unheard Beatles material since the band's breakup in 1970. But when word reached Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and John Lennon's estate, enthusiasm quickly turned into outrage. McCartney, ever the perfectionist, argued that these tracks had been left unreleased for a reason. Many were incomplete, experimental, or abandoned during sessions that never felt up to the band's usual standard. Releasing them without proper context, he feared, would misrepresent the Beatles' creative legacy. Harrison, known for his dry wit and guarded approach to nostalgia, was even more direct. To him, the idea of strangers rifling through studio leftovers bordered on sacrilege. Lennon's widow Yoko Ono, representing his estate, echoed their sentiments, demanding that the project be scrapped altogether. Within months, Sessions was dead. EMI had no choice but to pull the plug after facing unanimous opposition from the very people whose music they were trying to honor. What might have been another posthumous cash grab ended in silence, or at least that's what the label hoped. The reality was far messier. Once word spread that the album had been cancelled, bootleggers swooped in. Rough mixes of the songs began circulating across Europe and America, passed from hand to hand like forbidden artifacts. By the late 1980s, Sessions had become one of the most famous lost albums in rock history. Its myth growing larger with each new generation of collectors who managed to snag a tape or vinyl copy. For fans, hearing new Beatles songs, even in rough, unfinished form, was an electrifying experience. One fan on Reddit later recalled, "I got my hands on a bootleg copy years before Anthology, and it was insanely cool to hear unheard Beatles tracks. Before the internet, it felt like discovering buried treasure." Others remembered the excitement on radio stations across New York and Los Angeles when DJs started spinning Leave My Kitten Alone just before the official release was canceled. Once the word got out that it was over, the bootlegs exploded, one listener said. You could find them everywhere, at record fairs, at Beatlefest, even in small suburban shops. Yet not everyone was thrilled with what they heard. Some of the leaked mixes were marred by heavy echo, uneven balance, and what one critic described as warbling distortion, straight out of the Dave Dexter Jr. school of bad mastering. Even diehard fans who adored the material admitted the sound was rough. "I was so excited to hear a clean mix when Anthology 2 came out," another listener said, "but they used the same Sessions version. I couldn't believe it. It sounded awful." Despite its flawed execution, Sessions sparked a larger discussion about how the Beatles should be remembered. The project's collapse forced Apple and the surviving members to confront the uncomfortable truth that their legacy was slipping into other people's hands. If they didn't take control of their own story, someone else would. That reckoning led directly to the creation of the Beatles Anthology, the massive multimedia project that redefined how the world viewed the band's history. Launched in the mid-1990s, Anthology was everything Sessions had failed to be. Artist-approved, carefully curated, and narratively cohesive. It wasn't just an album series. It was a full-scale cultural event, complete with an 8-part television documentary, a lavish coffee table book, and 3 double-disc albums filled with outtakes, demos, and alternative versions, many drawn from the same sessions material. More importantly, Anthology put the Beatles back in control. McCartney, Harrison, and Ringo Starr personally oversaw the production, ensuring that every recording met the band's standards. The release also delivered 2 new Beatles songs, Free as a Bird and Real Love. Built from Lennon's home demos and finished with fresh contributions from his former bandmates. The message was clear. This was the Beatles reclaiming their legacy, not a record company raiding the archives. Ironically, Sessions had laid the groundwork for it all. The failed album proved that fans' appetite for unreleased Beatles music was enormous, but it also demonstrated how easily that enthusiasm could backfire without the band's involvement. As a result, Anthology became both a creative triumph and a moral victory, allowing the Beatles to curate their own past instead of letting others profit from it. For collectors, though, Sessions remains an irresistible curiosity. Bootlegs of the original 1985 mixes continue to circulate, some remastered, others untouched, each offering a glimpse of what might have been. Scholars and audiophiles pore over them, comparing the rough versions to their eventual Anthology counterparts, analyzing every echo and guitar tone like archaeologists of pop culture. Looking back, Sessions was never just about unreleased songs. It was about authorship and authenticity. In the years following the band's breakup, the Beatles had become more than musicians. They were symbols of an era, a shared cultural memory. To tamper with that memory was to risk rewriting history itself. By saying no to Sessions, McCartney, Harrison, and Ono weren't simply blocking a record. They were defending an idea that the Beatles' story should be told properly, with care, precision, and purpose. In that sense, Sessions may be one of the most important albums the Beatles never released. It forced a reckoning over who owns art once its creators are gone, and it set the stage for one of the most ambitious retrospective projects in music history. Out of its failure came clarity, and from that clarity came Anthology, a definitive statement that transformed nostalgia into narrative. Today, nearly 4 decades later, Sessions endures as a fascinating what if in the Beatles canon. It remains a ghost record, whispered about in fan forums, and traded at record fairs, forever caught between myth and memory. But without its controversy, the Beatles might never have given the world the sweeping reflection that was Anthology. In trying to silence Sessions, they instead reignited their own story, proving once again that, even in absence, the Beatles still had the final word.